The meatloaf was getting cold, but I couldn't taste it anyway. Not after what Megan had just said. "I've been dating your best friend for 6 months," she announced, cutting her food with surgical precision. "Accept it or be alone, Tom." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I set down my fork and looked at my wife of 12 years. Really looked at her. The blonde hair she'd been touching up more often lately. The new clothes that showed up without explanation. The phone that never left her side, buzzing constantly with messages she'd shielded from view. "Aaron?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yes, Aaron." She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "He makes me feel alive again. Something you haven't done in years." Ellie and Max, our 10 and 8-year-old kids, sat frozen at the table. Max's Spider-Man fork hung halfway to his mouth, a piece of meatloaf sliding off it onto his plate. Ellie's eyes were wide, darting between us like she was watching a tennis match that might explode. "Kids, go watch TV in the living room," I said quietly. "But we're not done eating," Max started. "Now." They scrambled out of their chairs and disappeared around the corner. I heard the television click on, volume turned up loud. Smart kids. They'd learned to make themselves scarce when Mom and Dad's voices got that particular edge. Megan's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it and smiled, actually smiled, before typing a quick response. "So that's it?" I asked. 12 years of marriage, 2 kids, and you're just done? "I'm not done, Tom. I'm moving forward, with or without you." She finally looked up from her phone. "Aaron understands me. He listens when I talk. He doesn't come home covered in sawdust and grunt at me while watching sports. I'm a construction manager, Megan. Sawdust comes with the territory, and I've never just grunted at you. Haven't you?" Her voice was sharp now, the mask slipping. "When's the last time you asked me about my day? Really asked, not just, how was work, while scrolling through your phone?" I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. She wasn't entirely wrong, but that didn't justify this nuclear option she'd just dropped on our family. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now you decide if you can handle sharing me, or if you want to be stubborn and lose everything." She stood up, smoothing down her new blouse, one I'd never seen before. "I'm going out. Aaron's taking me to that new Italian place in Portland." "It's Tuesday night. The kids have school tomorrow." "They'll be fine. You managed to raise them this long without much help from me, right?" She grabbed her purse and keys. "Don't wait up." The front door slammed, leaving me alone with 2 plates of cooling meatloaf and the sound of cartoons from the living room. I sat there for a long moment, processing what had just happened. My wife of 12 years had just announced she was cheating on me with my best friend, former best friend, and expected me to be okay with it. Aaron Miles, the guy who'd been my groomsman, who'd helped me build the deck in our backyard, who came to every one of Max's Little League games and cheered louder than anyone when Ellie won the school spelling bee. My phone sat on the table next to my plate. I picked it up and scrolled to Aaron's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. What would I even say? "Hey, buddy, heard you're screwing my wife. Want to grab a beer and talk it over?" Instead, I walked to the living room and sat between my kids on the couch. They leaned against me without saying anything, and we watched cartoon characters chase each other around with mallets and dynamite. Simple problems with simple solutions. If only real life worked that way. After I tucked the kids into bed, Max asking where Mommy went, Ellie just giving me a hug that lasted longer than usual, I found myself standing in our bedroom doorway. Megan's tablet sat charging on her nightstand. She'd always been careless with her passwords, using the same one for everything, the kids' birthdays combined. I shouldn't look. I knew I shouldn't look. I looked. The messages between Megan and Aaron went back months, photos I definitely didn't want to see. Plans made in hotels while I thought she was working late at the dental office. Conversations about how boring and predictable I was. How Aaron made her feel like a woman again. But it was the most recent exchange that made me freeze. Aaron. "So you told him?" Megan. "Yes. He just sat there like a lump, probably trying to figure out how to guilt me into staying." Aaron. "And if he doesn't accept it?" Megan. "Then we move to plan B. I've already talked to a lawyer. With his temper and the drinking, I can probably get full custody and the house." My temper? I'd raised my voice maybe 3 times in our entire marriage. And the drinking? I had maybe 2 beers a week, usually while grilling burgers on the weekend. I screenshot everything. Every message, every photo, every lie they'd built our destruction on. Then I put the tablet back exactly where I'd found it and walked down to my workshop in the basement. I had some planning to do. The next morning, I made breakfast like nothing had happened. Pancakes for the kids, coffee for myself. Megan stumbled in around 7:30, makeup smudged and wearing the same clothes from the night before. "Daddy made Mickey Mouse pancakes," Max announced, syrup dripping down his chin. Megan poured herself coffee and avoided eye contact. "That's nice, honey." "Where were you this morning, Mommy?" Ellie asked with the brutal honesty of a 10-year-old. "Your bed wasn't slept in?" "I stayed at Aunt Gina's," Megan said quickly. "We had girl talk that went late." Another lie to add to the collection. I'd seen the hotel receipt in one of her photos, the Marriott downtown, room 237, and charged to Aaron's credit card. "Kids, go get ready for school," I said. "Bus comes in 20 minutes. They thundered upstairs, and Megan finally looked at me. "We need to talk. I think you said everything you needed to say last night." "Tom, I know this is hard, but hard?" I set down my coffee cup carefully. "Megan, you just blew up our family and expected me to thank you for it. Hard doesn't begin to cover it." "I'm not blowing up our family. I'm trying to be honest about what I need." "What you need is to screw my best friend in hotel rooms while lying to our children about where you are." Her face flushed red. "How dare you?" "How dare I what? Point out that you're cheating? That you're lying to our kids? That you're planning to take them away from me based on fictional stories about my temper and drinking?" The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." I stood up and grabbed my work jacket. "I'm going to work. Try to be home when the kids get off the bus. They shouldn't have to wonder where both parents are." I made it to my truck before my hands started shaking. 12 years. 12 goddamn years of building a life together, and she'd torched it all for Aaron Miles. Aaron, who couldn't hold down a relationship for more than 6 months. Aaron, who'd borrowed money from me just last year to keep his auto shop afloat. My phone rang. Speak of the devil. "Tom, buddy, we need to talk." Aaron's voice was carefully casual, but I could hear the tension underneath. "I bet we do." "Look, I know Megan talked to you last night. This is awkward as hell, but we're all adults here. We can work something out." "Work something out?" I repeated the words slowly. "What exactly did you have in mind, Aaron?" "Maybe we could grab a beer after work? Hash this out man to man?" "Man to man." I laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. "You know what, Aaron? You're right. We should definitely hash this out. Murphy's Tavern, 8 o'clock. "Great. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. You're a good guy, Tom." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Or rather, something I'd regret saying over the phone instead of to his face. The construction site was a welcome distraction. Physical work, clear objectives, problems that could be solved with tools and sweat instead of lawyers and therapists. I was supervising the foundation pour for a new subdivision when Gus, my foreman, wandered over. "You look like hell, boss," he said, lighting a cigarette. "Everything okay at home?" Gus had worked for me for 8 years. He was 62, built like a tree stump, and had survived 3 divorces. If anyone would understand, it was him. "Megan's leaving me for Aaron Miles." Gus took a long drag and blew smoke toward the sky. "That flashy asshole with the auto shop? The one who thinks he's God's gift to carburetors? That's the one. Shit." Gus flicked his cigarette into the dirt and ground it under his boot. "How long?" 6 months, apparently. She told me last night like she was announcing the weather forecast. "Kids know?" They were at the dinner table when she dropped the bomb. "Jesus Christ." Gus shook his head. "What are you going to do?" "I'm meeting Aaron tonight. We're going to hash it out man to man." I made air quotes around Aaron's words. "Want backup?" I considered it. Gus had been a Marine before he got into construction. He'd taught me more about handling difficult situations than any management course ever could, but this was something I needed to handle myself. "Thanks, but no. This is between me and him." "All right, but Tom?" Gus fixed me with a serious look. "Whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Don't give them ammunition to use against you later." He was right, of course. If Megan was already building a case about my temper, I couldn't afford to lose control. Everything I did from here on out had to be calculated, documented, and legally bulletproof. The rest of the day crawled by. I called my lawyer, Jim Patterson, and made an appointment for the next morning. I transferred copies of all the screenshots to a secure cloud account. I started a detailed journal of everything that had happened, with dates and times. By the time I got home, I had the beginnings of a plan. The kids were doing homework at the kitchen table when I walked in. Megan was nowhere to be seen, but I could hear the shower running upstairs. "How was school?" I asked, ruffling Max's hair. "Good. We're learning about fractions. They're stupid." "Fractions are everywhere, buddy. How do you think I measure lumber at work?" Ellie looked up from her social studies worksheet. Daddy, are you and Mommy getting divorced? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Kids always knew more than you thought they did. Why would you ask that, sweetheart? Because Jessica's parents got divorced last year, and first they were fighting a lot, and then her mom moved out, and now Jessica has to go back and forth between houses. Ellie's voice was matter-of-fact, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I knelt down next to her chair. Your mom and I are having some problems right now, but no matter what happens, we both love you and Max more than anything in the world. That will never change. But you might get divorced? I couldn't lie to her. She was too smart, and she'd figure it out soon enough anyway. It's possible, but if we do, it won't be because of anything you or Max did wrong. Sometimes grown-ups just can't work out their problems. Max looked up from his math worksheet. Would we still live here? I don't know yet, buddy. We'd have to figure that out. Megan appeared in the doorway, hair wet from her shower, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Another new outfit for another date with Aaron. Going out again? I asked. Aaron's taking me to dinner. We have things to discuss. I bet you do. I'm meeting him at Murphy's at 8. Her face went pale. Tom, please don't make this ugly. I'm not making anything ugly, Megan. I'm just going to have a conversation with my former best friend about his decision to destroy my family. Very civilized. She opened her mouth to say something else, then apparently thought better of it. I'll be home late. Don't wait up. Wouldn't dream of it. After she left, I helped the kids with their homework and made dinner. We ate in front of the TV, watching a nature documentary about wolves. The narrator was explaining pack dynamics and territorial behavior when Max piped up. The wolves fight when someone tries to take over their territory. That's right, I said. Are you going to fight Aaron, Daddy? I looked at my 8-year-old son, who was watching me with the same serious expression he got when he was trying to solve a difficult math problem. Not the way wolves fight, I said, but sometimes grown-ups have to stand up for what's important to them. Is our family important? Our family is the most important thing in the world to me. He nodded, satisfied with that answer, and turned back to the TV. But I could see Ellie watching me from the corner of her eye, processing everything with the scary intelligence she'd inherited from both her parents. At 7:30, I kissed both kids goodnight and headed for Murphy's Tavern. It was time to hash things out, man to man. Murphy's Tavern hadn't changed in the 20 years I'd been drinking there. Same neon beer signs, same scarred wooden bar, same smell of cigarettes and fried food that no amount of ventilation could eliminate. It was the kind of place where construction workers, mechanics, and other blue-collar guys came to complain about their bosses, their wives, and the state of the world in general. Aaron was already there when I walked in, sitting in a corner booth with a beer in front of him. He'd dressed up for the occasion, khakis and a polo shirt instead of his usual grease-stained work clothes. His dark hair was slicked back, and he'd trimmed his beard. He looked like a man trying to convince himself he was something he wasn't. I ordered a Budweiser from Sally, the bartender who'd been working there since the Clinton administration, and walked over to Aaron's table. He stood up and extended his hand like we were meeting for a business lunch. Tom, thanks for coming. I ignored his hand and slid into the booth across from him. Let's skip the pleasantries, Aaron. You're screwing my wife. I'm here. What did you want to say? He sat back down and took a sip of his beer. Look, I know this is awkward. Awkward? I kept my voice low, but I could feel the anger building behind my ribs like steam in a boiler. You think this is awkward? You've been sleeping with my wife for 6 months while pretending to be my friend, and you think it's awkward. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. How was it supposed to happen, Aaron? You were going to ask my permission first? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Megan and I, we connected. She was unhappy, Tom. She needed someone who understood her. And you were just being a good Samaritan, right? Helping out a friend's unhappy wife by sticking your dick in her. Don't be crude. Crude? I laughed, and several people at the bar turned to look. You want to talk about crude? How about hotel receipts charged to your credit card? How about the photos you two have been sending each other? How about planning to take my kids away from me based on lies? Aaron's face went white. She told you about the lawyer? She didn't tell me shit, but she's not as careful with her passwords as she thinks she is. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the screenshots. Nice picture, by the way. I'm sure your mother would be proud. He stared at the phone screen, then looked up at me. You can't use those. That's invasion of privacy. Actually, I can. They were on a device in my house, accessed with passwords my wife gave me years ago. Perfectly legal. I'd already checked with my lawyer about that. But let's talk about something else, like how you're planning to help Megan paint me as an angry drunk to get custody of my kids. Tom, that's not what? Not true? Not the plan? I leaned forward across the table. Erin, I've known you for 15 years. You're a lot of things. Charming, good with your hands, popular with women, but you're not smart enough to pull this off. This whole thing has Megan's fingerprints all over it. He took another drink, and I could see his hands shaking slightly. She said you'd gotten violent with her, that you'd been drinking more. When have you ever seen me violent, Erin? When have you ever seen me drunk? He couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I'd never laid a hand on Megan in anger, and my idea of heavy drinking was having 3 beers while watching a football game. She's using you, I said. You realize that, right? She wants out of our marriage, but she doesn't want to look like the bad guy. So she's making me the villain, and you're her knight in shining armor. When this all falls apart, and it will fall apart, she'll find someone else to rescue her. You don't know her like I do. I've been married to her for 12 years, Erin. I know exactly who she is. I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the table. But you're going to find out soon enough. I started to stand up, then sat back down. One more thing. You're done coming to my kids' games. You're done coming to our house. You're done pretending to be their Uncle Aaron. You made your choice. Live with it. Tom, the kids don't have to suffer because of this. I care about them. If you cared about them, you wouldn't have blown up their family. I stood up and threw a $5 bill on the table. Enjoy your new life, Erin. I hope she's worth it. I was halfway to the door when I heard his voice behind me. You can't stop this, Tom. She's not happy with you. She hasn't been happy for years. I turned around. The entire bar had gone quiet, everyone watching our little drama unfold. You're right, Erin. I can't stop it, but I don't have to make it easy for you either. I walked out into the cool night air, got in my truck, and sat there for a moment. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline and anger coursing through my system, but I'd kept my temper. I'd been calm, rational, and I'd gotten some useful information. Aaron was nervous. He knew they were on shaky legal ground with their custody plans, and most importantly, he was starting to doubt whether Megan was worth the trouble. That was something I could work with. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Gus. How'd it go? I typed back, Phase 1 complete. Time for Phase 2. Need help? Not yet, but soon. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through our quiet suburban neighborhood. Houses with lights in the windows, families settling in for the night, kids doing homework while their parents watched TV or cleaned up dinner dishes, normal families living normal lives. That had been us, just 24 hours ago. Not perfect, maybe not even particularly happy, but stable, predictable, safe. Megan had torched all of that for what? Excitement? Passion? The thrill of sneaking around with another man? Well, she wanted excitement. She was about to get more than she bargained for. When I got home, the babysitter was watching TV in the living room. Mrs. Henderson from next door, who'd been watching our kids since they were toddlers. How were they? I asked. Angels, as always. They did their homework, brushed their teeth, and went to bed without any fuss. She gathered up her knitting and headed for the door. Tom, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I've noticed Megan's been going out a lot lately. Everything okay? Mrs. Henderson was 73 years old and had lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone. She saw everything and forgot nothing. We're going through a rough patch, I said. She patted my arm with one wrinkled hand. Marriage is hard work, dear, but those children need both their parents. Yes, ma'am, they do. After she left, I checked on Ellie and Max. Both were sleeping soundly, Max clutching his stuffed dinosaur, Ellie with a book still open on her nightstand. I closed the book, turned off her reading light, and stood there for a moment, watching them sleep. They didn't deserve this. Whatever happened between Megan and me, they didn't deserve to have their world turned upside down because their mother decided she needed more excitement in her life. I went downstairs to my workshop and fired up my laptop. Time to do some research. By the time Megan came home at midnight, I had a comprehensive file on Aaron Miles, his business finances, his dating history, his social media accounts, even his credit report. The internet was a wonderful thing if you knew where to look. I also had the contact information for Rachel Miles, Aaron's wife. It was time to make some new friends. Rachel Miles answered her phone on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. Hello? Mrs. Miles, this is Tom Jacobs. I'm sorry to call so late, but we need to talk. There was a long pause. About what? About what our spouses have been doing for the past 6 months. Another pause, longer this time. Then, I'll meet you tomorrow. Denny's on Route 1, 8 a.m. She hung up before I could respond. I'd seen Rachel around town over the years, PTA meetings, Little League games, the occasional barbecue when Aaron and I were still friends. She was a nurse at the local hospital, quiet and competent, with prematurely gray hair and tired eyes, the kind of woman who held everything together while her husband played at being a big shot. The next morning, I dropped the kids at school and headed to Denny's. Rachel was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee and a manila folder in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept much. "Tom?" She didn't smile or offer to shake hands. "Sit down." I slid into the booth across from her. Up close, I could see she'd been crying recently. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. "How long have you known?" I asked. About Aaron and your wife?" 3 weeks. I found hotel receipts in his jacket pocket." She opened the manila folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Credit card statements, phone records, photos I took of his text messages. "I've been building a case." "For divorce?" "For war." Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "Aaron thinks I'm stupid. He thinks because I work nights and sleep during the day, I don't notice what he's doing. He's wrong." She spread the papers across the table. It was impressive work, detailed, organized, thorough. Rachel had been busy. "Why did you call me?" she asked. "Because Megan's planning to take my kids and paint me as an abusive drunk to get custody, because Aaron's helping her do it, and because I think we can help each other." "What do you have in mind?" I pulled out my own folder. Screenshots of the messages, photos, financial records showing money Megan had taken from our joint account for hotel rooms and dinners with Aaron. "Between what you have and what I have, we can bury both of them." Rachel studied my documents, her expression never changing. After 10 minutes, she looked up at me. "Your wife is a piece of work." "So is your husband." "Yes, he is." She gathered up all the papers and put them back in her folder. "What's your plan?" "First, we document everything. Every lie, every hotel visit, every penny they spend on their affair. Second, we make sure they can't use false allegations against us in custody proceedings. Third," I paused, trying to figure out how to phrase it diplomatically. "Third, we destroy them," Rachel finished. "Socially, financially, professionally. We make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of people they are." "That's a little harsh." "Tom, my husband has been screwing your wife for 6 months while I worked 60-hour weeks to keep our household afloat. He's been lying to my face every single day, spending our money on hotel rooms and fancy dinners for another woman. Harsh doesn't begin to cover what I'm feeling right now." She had a point, and looking at the cold fury in her eyes, I realized Rachel Miles was going to be a very useful ally. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Access to your wife's communications. I want to see everything. Texts, emails, social media, dating apps." "Dating apps?" Rachel smiled for the first time since I'd sat down. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Oh, Tom, you really don't know your wife at all, do you?" She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot from a dating app called Adult Friend Finder. Megan's profile, complete with photos I'd never seen before and a bio describing herself as recently separated and looking for fun. "She's been active on 3 different sites," Rachel said. "Aaron isn't her only extracurricular activity." I stared at the phone screen, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Bad enough that she was cheating with Aaron. But multiple men? How long had this been going on? "I'll get you access to everything," I said. "Good. And Tom? When this is over, they're both going to wish they'd never met each other?" We spent another hour planning, sharing information and coordinating our approach. Rachel was methodical, thorough, and absolutely ruthless. She'd already contacted a private investigator to document Aaron's movements, and she had a lawyer who specialized in high-conflict divorces. "One more thing," she said as we prepared to leave. "Don't underestimate your wife. She's been planning this for months, maybe longer. She's got strategies you haven't thought of yet." "Such as?" "Such as the fact that she's been documenting every argument you've ever had, every time you've raised your voice, every beer you've had with dinner. She's building a case too, Tom, and she's had a head start. That afternoon, I met with my lawyer, Jim Patterson. Jim was a rumpled, middle-aged guy who looked more like an accountant than a divorce attorney, but he had a reputation for being thorough and aggressive when necessary. "Tom, I'm going to be honest with you," he said after reviewing the evidence I'd brought. "This is going to get ugly. Your wife is clearly planning a scorched earth approach, and she's got some advantages." "Such as?" "She's the mother. In custody disputes, judges still tend to favor mothers, especially when the children are young. She's also got a clean employment record, no history of substance abuse, and she's been setting you up to look bad for months." But I've got proof she's been cheating, lying to the kids, spending marital assets on her affairs, all of which helps, but it doesn't guarantee anything. Maine is a no-fault divorce state, which means her adultery doesn't automatically disqualify her from getting custody or alimony. Jim leaned back in his chair. However, the child endangerment angle is promising. If we can prove she's been leaving the kids alone to meet her boyfriends or exposing them to inappropriate situations, that could work in our favor. What do you need from me? Everything you've got, plus more. I want you to document every interaction with your wife from now on. Record conversations if it's legal to do so, and in Maine, it is as long as you're party to the conversation. Keep a detailed journal, and whatever you do, don't lose your temper. Don't give her ammunition to use against you. What about Rachel Miles? Can she help? Absolutely. Corroborating testimony from the other betrayed spouse will be very valuable, and if she's willing to testify about your wife's character and behavior, that could be decisive. I left Jim's office feeling slightly more optimistic. I had a plan, I had evidence, and I had an ally who was even more motivated than I was to see justice done. But as I drove home, Rachel's warning echoed in my head. Don't underestimate your wife. She's been planning this for months. What else had Megan been planning that I didn't know about? I was about to find out. The ambush came 3 days later, at the worst possible moment. I was at the construction site dealing with a concrete delivery that had gone wrong when Detective Owens from the local police department showed up. He was a big guy with a gray mustache and the kind of steady gaze that made you want to confess to crimes you hadn't committed. Tom Jacobs? That's me. I wiped concrete dust off my hands and walked over to where he stood next to his patrol car. What can I do for you, Detective? I need to ask you some questions about a domestic disturbance report we received. Is there somewhere private we can talk? I kept my expression neutral. Sure, my trailer's right over there. We walked to the job site trailer in silence. I could feel my crew watching us, and I knew the gossip mill would be running overtime by lunch. Gus caught my eye and raised his eyebrows questioningly. I gave him a slight shake of the head. Not now. Inside the trailer, Detective Owens pulled out a notebook and pen. Mr. Jacobs, your wife filed a complaint yesterday, alleging that you've been threatening her and engaging in intimidating behavior. She's also concerned about your drinking and its effect on your children. My drinking? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. Detective, I have maybe 2 beers a week, and I've never threatened my wife. She says you've been following her, taking pictures of her and making threatening phone calls. I haven't followed her anywhere. I haven't taken any pictures. And the only phone calls I've made to her have been about our children's schedules. Detective Owens made notes as I spoke. She also mentioned that you've been acting erratically since she asked for a separation, staying out late, coming home angry, yelling at the children. Every word was a carefully crafted lie, designed to make me look unstable and dangerous. Megan had been busy. Detective, my wife has been having an affair for 6 months with a man named Aaron Miles. She announced this to me in front of our children 3 days ago. Since then, I've been consulting with a lawyer about divorce and custody arrangements. That's not erratic behavior. That's responsible behavior. You have proof of this affair? I hesitated. I had screenshots from Megan's tablet, but I wasn't sure how much I should reveal to the police. I have evidence, yes. My lawyer is handling it. Mr. Jacobs, I'm going to be straight with you. Your wife seems genuinely frightened. She's asked for a restraining order, and she's considering taking the children and staying somewhere else until things calm down. She's not frightened, Detective. She's manipulative. This is all part of a plan to make me look bad in divorce proceedings. Can you prove that? I'm working on it. Detective Owens closed his notebook and stood up. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from your wife except when absolutely necessary for matters involving your children. You're not going to contact her friends, her workplace, or anyone else in her life. You're going to be a model citizen until this gets sorted out. Because if I get another complaint, I'm going to have to take it very seriously. Do you understand? I understand. Good. He headed for the door, then turned back. Mr. Jacobs, get yourself a good lawyer. You're going to need one. After he left, I sat in the trailer for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Megan had played her first major card, and it was a good one. She'd established a paper trail of complaints against me, making it look like I was the dangerous one in our relationship. My phone rang. It was Jim Patterson. Tom, I just got a call from the district attorney's office. Your wife is filing for an emergency restraining order this afternoon. The hearing is tomorrow morning at 9. On what grounds? Domestic violence, threats, stalking, and substance abuse. She's also filing for emergency custody of the children and temporary exclusive use of the marital home. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. She's trying to kick me out of my own house and take my kids. That's exactly what she's trying to do. And Tom? She's got a very good lawyer. Margaret Thornton, she's expensive, aggressive, and she specializes in high-conflict divorces. Your wife didn't just decide to do this yesterday. She's been planning it for weeks, maybe months. What do I do? You show up tomorrow morning with every piece of evidence you have, and you pray that the judge is having a good day. I hung up and called Rachel. She answered on the first ring. They're making their move, I said. I know. Aaron came home last night and told me he was leaving. He's moving in with your wife temporarily to help protect her from your increasingly erratic behavior. Her voice was acid. Apparently I'm supposed to be grateful that he's being such a good Samaritan. Megan's trying to get a restraining order and kick me out of the house. Then we accelerate our timeline. Meet me at Murphy's tonight at 8. And Tom, bring everything you have. It's time to go nuclear. The rest of the day crawled by. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering to the hearing tomorrow morning. What if the judge believed Megan's lies? What if I lost my kids? At 6 o'clock, I drove home to find Aaron's truck in my driveway. He was in my house, with my wife, while my children were there. I sat in my truck for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to control my temper. Detective Owens had been very clear about staying away from confrontations. But this was my house. These were my children. I walked through the front door to find Aaron sitting at my kitchen table, eating dinner with my family like he belonged there. Ellie and Max looked confused and uncomfortable. Megan looked defiant. Tom, she said carefully, we need to talk. Get him out of my house. This is a difficult situation for everyone, Aaron said, standing up. I'm just here to help. Get out of my house. Daddy, why is Uncle Aaron here? Max asked. And why do you look so mad? I looked at my 8-year-old son, who was staring at me with wide, frightened eyes, and forced myself to calm down. Whatever was happening between the adults, I couldn't scare my children. Uncle Aaron was just leaving, I said, never taking my eyes off Aaron's face. Actually, Megan said, Aaron's going to be staying here for a while, to make sure the children are safe. Safe from what? From you, Tom. You've been drinking more, staying out late, acting angry and unpredictable. The children need stability. It was masterfully done. She was painting me as the threat, positioning Aaron as the protector, all while my confused children watched the adults in their lives tear each other apart. Kids, go upstairs and start getting ready for bed, I said quietly. But we haven't finished dinner, Ellie started. Now please. They left the table reluctantly, looking back over their shoulders as they climbed the stairs. As soon as they were out of sight, I turned to Aaron. You have 30 seconds to get out of my house before I call the police. Tom, be reasonable. 25 seconds. Megan stood up. If you call the police, you'll just be proving my point about your temper and instability. 20 seconds. Aaron grabbed his jacket. This doesn't have to be ugly, Tom. 15 seconds. He headed for the door, but stopped in the doorway. You can't stop this. Megan deserves better than what you've given her. 10 seconds. He left. I heard his truck start up and pull out of the driveway. Megan was still standing by the table, arms crossed, watching me with calculating eyes. That was quite a performance, she said. Very intimidating. I'm sure the judge will be interested to hear about it. You recorded that conversation. I record all our conversations now, Tom, for my own protection. I looked at my wife of 12 years, the mother of my children, and realized I was looking at a complete stranger. The woman I'd married would never have done something this cold, this calculated, this cruel. What happened to you, Megan? For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something that might have been regret in her eyes. Then it was gone. I grew up, Tom. I realized I deserve more than a life of quiet desperation with a man who takes me for granted. So you decided to destroy our family instead. I decided to save myself. The family was already over. You just didn't notice. I went upstairs and tucked my children into bed, answering their worried questions as best I could without lying to them or poisoning them against their mother. Then I drove to Murphy's to meet Rachel and plan the counterattack. Tomorrow morning's hearing was going to determine everything, whether I kept my children, my house, my life as I knew it. Megan thought she held all the cards. She was about to find out she was wrong. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, paneled in dark wood with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look pale and tired. Judge Franklin was a stern woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and the kind of no-nonsense expression that suggested she'd heard every lie and excuse in the book. Megan sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, Margaret Thornton, a sharp-dressed woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and predatory eyes. Aaron sat in the gallery behind them, playing the role of supportive friend. I sat with Jim Patterson, trying to look calm and reasonable while my stomach churned with anxiety. In the gallery behind us sat Rachel Miles, holding a thick folder of documents. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Franklin," the bailiff announced. Judge Franklin took her seat and reviewed the paperwork in front of her. "This is a hearing for emergency restraining order and temporary custody in the matter of Jacobs versus Jacobs. Ms. Thornton, you may present your case." Margaret Thornton stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Your Honor, my client Megan Jacobs is here today because she fears for her safety and the safety of her children. Her husband Tom has become increasingly unstable, threatening, and violent since she asked for a separation 3 days ago. She painted a picture of me as a dangerous drunk who'd been terrorizing my family, following my wife, making threatening phone calls, and creating an atmosphere of fear in our home. She played the recording Megan had made of our confrontation the night before, making my demand that Aaron leave sound like an unhinged rant. Your Honor," Thornton continued, "Mr. Jacobs has shown a pattern of escalating behavior that puts my client and her children at risk. She's asking for protection from this court and for temporary custody to ensure the children's safety." Megan took the stand and delivered her testimony with tears in her eyes and a trembling voice. She was good, very good. She described a marriage filled with emotional abuse, a husband who drank too much and flew into rages, a man who'd become obsessed with controlling her every move. "He's been following me," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, "taking pictures, going through my phone, accusing me of terrible things. I'm afraid of what he might do." When it was Jim Patterson's turn, he stood up slowly and arranged his papers on the podium. "Your Honor, Mr. Jacobs is the victim here, not the perpetrator. Everything you've heard from Ms. Jacobs is a carefully constructed fiction designed to give her an advantage in divorce proceedings." He presented our evidence methodically, the screenshots of Megan's messages with Aaron, the hotel receipts, the dating app profiles, the financial records showing money taken from our joint account for her affairs. "Your Honor, Ms. Jacobs has been conducting multiple extramarital affairs for at least 6 months. She's been lying to her children about her whereabouts, leaving them alone to meet her boyfriends, and spending marital assets on hotel rooms and dinners with other men. The only threat to those children is their mother's reckless behavior." Judge Franklin studied the evidence, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Jacobs, did you create profiles on dating websites while married to your husband?" Megan's lawyer whispered something in her ear. "Your Honor, my personal relationships are not relevant to the question of whether my husband poses a threat to our family." "Actually, they are relevant if those relationships involve deception, child endangerment, and financial misconduct. Answer the question." "Yes, Your Honor. I was exploring my options." "And did you leave your minor children alone in the evening to meet men from these dating sites?" Another whispered conference with her lawyer. "Sometimes, yes, but only for short periods." Judge Franklin made notes. "Mr. Patterson, call your next witness." "I call Rachel Miles, Your Honor." Rachel took the stand and was sworn in. She was calm, professional, and devastating. "Mrs. Miles, how do you know the parties in this case?" "Tom Jacobs is a friend and neighbor. Megan Jacobs has been having an affair with my husband Aaron for the past 6 months." "How do you know about this affair?" "I have hotel receipts, credit card statements, photographs of text messages, and recorded phone conversations. I also hired a private investigator who documented their activities." Rachel methodically presented evidence of the affair, including photos of Megan and Aaron entering and leaving hotels, restaurants, and Aaron's auto shop after hours. She had financial records showing Aaron had spent over $3,000 on the affair, money from their joint account that should have gone to household expenses. "Mrs. Miles, in your observation, does Mr. Tom Jacobs appear to be a violent or unstable person?" "Absolutely not. I've known Tom for years. He's one of the most level-headed, responsible men I've ever met. He's a devoted father who's been trying to hold his family together while his wife destroys it." "And Mrs. Megan Jacobs?" Rachel's expression hardened. "Mrs. Jacobs is a manipulative woman who's been systematically deceiving her husband and children for months. She's been coaching my husband on how to help her gain custody by making false allegations about Tom's character." Margaret Thornton objected, but Judge Franklin allowed the testimony. When it was Thornton's turn to cross-examine Rachel, she tried to paint her as a bitter woman seeking revenge on her cheating husband. But Rachel was unflappable, sticking to facts and documented evidence. The hearing lasted 3 hours. When it was over, Judge Franklin announced her decision. "This court finds that the evidence does not support the allegations of domestic violence or substance abuse against Mr. Jacobs. The emergency restraining order is denied. However, given the high level of conflict between the parties, I'm ordering both parents to attend mediation before any custody arrangements are finalized." Megan's face went white. Margaret Thornton whispered furiously in her ear. Furthermore, Judge Franklin continued, I'm troubled by the evidence of financial misconduct and child endangerment presented today. I'm ordering a full investigation by Child Protective Services into the living situation of these minor children. It was better than I'd hoped for. I kept my expression neutral as we left the courtroom, but inside I was celebrating. Megan's first major attack had failed spectacularly. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Erin approached me while Megan was talking to her lawyer. Tom, we need to end this. It's getting out of hand. You're right, Erin. It is getting out of hand. But you started it, and now you're going to finish it. What do you want? I looked at him, really looked at him. Aaron Miles, my former best friend, who'd helped destroy my marriage and tried to take my children. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the morning's events. I want you to stay away from my family. I want you to end your relationship with my wife, and I want you to pray that I never see you alone in a dark alley. Are you threatening me? I'm making you a promise. Rachel appeared at my elbow. Aaron, we need to talk. Your lawyer wants to discuss settlement terms for our divorce. Aaron looked between us, realizing for the first time that he was facing enemies on multiple fronts. His affair with Megan had cost him his marriage, his reputation, and most of his savings, and we were just getting started. This isn't over, he said. No, I agreed. It's not. But I was winning, and by the time I was finished, Aaron Miles and my lying, cheating wife were going to wish they'd never met each other. The war was just beginning. 3 weeks after the hearing, Megan's world started falling apart in earnest. It began with her job. Dr. Patel, who owned the dental practice where Megan worked as a hygienist, called her into his office on a Monday morning. I know this because Rachel had anonymously sent him copies of the hotel receipts and dating app profiles, along with documentation showing that Megan had been calling in sick to meet her boyfriends. I can't have someone of questionable moral character working with our patients, Dr. Patel told her. You've been dishonest about your absences, and your personal conduct reflects poorly on this practice. Megan was fired on the spot. She called me that afternoon, hysterical. Tom, you have to help me. I lost my job. How am I going to pay my lawyer? That's not my problem, Megan. You made your choices. I have rights. I'm entitled to alimony, child support. You're entitled to what a judge says you're entitled to, and given your recent performance in court, I wouldn't count on getting much. She hung up on me. The next blow came from an unexpected source. Gina, Megan's best friend from work, had apparently grown tired of being lied to. She'd known about the affair with Aaron, but she hadn't known about the other men or the extent of Megan's deception. When Gina found out that Megan had been using her as an alibi for hotel meetings she knew nothing about, she was furious. She started telling everyone who would listen about Megan's multiple affairs and her lies about being abused. I can't believe I defended her, Gina told anyone who would listen at the grocery store, the gym, the coffee shop. She made me look like a fool. Within days, the story was all over town. Megan Jacobs, the dental hygienist who'd always seemed so perfect and put together, was actually a serial cheater who'd been lying to everyone for months. The social destruction was swift and merciless. Megan found herself excluded from the book club she'd belonged to for 5 years. The other mothers at school pickup gave her cold stares and whispered behind her back. Her church asked her to step down from the women's ministry. Aaron wasn't faring much better. Rachel had been busy spreading the word about his affair, and his auto shop was hemorrhaging customers. Men didn't want to do business with someone who'd betrayed his best friend. Women didn't trust him around their husbands. You need to call off your attack dog, Aaron told me when he cornered me at the gas station one evening. Rachel is destroying my business. Rachel's just telling people the truth about what kind of man you are, I said, not looking up from the gas pump. If that's destroying your business, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to screw my wife. Tom, I'm losing everything. My marriage, my business, my reputation. Isn't that enough? I looked at him then, this man who'd been my friend for 15 years before he'd stabbed me in the back. He looked haggard, desperate, defeated. No, I said, it's not enough. The Child Protective Services investigation was the final nail in Megan's coffin. The caseworker, a stern woman named Ms. Rodriguez, interviewed the children, reviewed the evidence from the court hearing, and conducted surprise visits to both Megan's apartment — she'd moved out of our house after losing her job — and my home. Her report was damning. She found that Megan had indeed left the children alone on multiple occasions to meet men, that she'd exposed them to inappropriate situations, and that her living situation was unstable. The children's best interests would be served by primary custody remaining with their father, the report concluded. The mother's pattern of deception and poor judgment raises serious concerns about her ability to provide a stable environment. When the custody hearing was held 2 months later, it was almost anticlimactic. Megan's lawyer had withdrawn from the case when Megan couldn't pay her fees. The court-appointed attorney who replaced her was overworked and unprepared. Judge Franklin awarded me primary custody, with Megan getting supervised visitation every other weekend. She also ordered Megan to pay child support, a laughable requirement since she had no job and no prospects. Furthermore, Judge Franklin said, given the evidence of financial misconduct during the marriage, I'm ordering that Mr. Jacobs retain the family home and the majority of the marital assets. Mrs. Jacobs will receive minimal alimony for a period of 2 years, contingent on her finding stable employment and completing a parenting class. Megan broke down crying in the courtroom. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. After the hearing, she approached me in the parking lot. Tom, please. I know I made mistakes, but I'm still the mother of your children. They need me. They needed you 6 months ago, when you decided Aaron Miles was more important than their stability. I was unhappy. I felt trapped, ignored, taken for granted. I just wanted to feel alive again. So you destroyed our family. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought you'd fight for me. I thought you'd try to win me back. I stared at her, this woman who'd shared my bed for 12 years, who'd given birth to my children, who'd been my partner in building the life she'd chosen to destroy. Megan, you told me to accept your affair or be alone. You moved your boyfriend into our house. You tried to take my children away from me with lies and false accusations. What exactly was I supposed to fight for? She had no answer for that. 6 months later, Aaron's auto shop went out of business. He moved to Portland, where Rachel's lawyer was still pursuing him for alimony and asset division. I heard through the grapevine that he was working at a chain garage, making a fraction of what he'd earned as a business owner. Megan found a job at a dental office in Augusta, an hour's drive from town. She was living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda because her lawyer fees and court costs had eaten up her savings. She saw the kids every other weekend, under the supervision of a court-appointed monitor. Ellie and Max were polite to her, but distant. The damage to their relationship might never fully heal. As for me, I was doing well. Better than well, actually. The construction company had promoted me to regional manager. The kids were thriving in their stable environment. I'd even started dating again, a teacher named Sarah who was kind, honest, and had no interest in drama. One evening, as I was grilling burgers in the backyard while Ellie and Max played on the swing set I'd built them, my phone rang. It was Megan. Tom, I need to ask you something. What? Do you ever think about what might have happened if we'd tried counseling instead? If we'd worked on our problems instead of this? I watched my children playing in the golden light of the setting sun, happy and secure in their home. No, Megan, I don't think about that. Why not? Because you didn't want to work on our problems. You wanted excitement. You wanted passion. You wanted to feel alive. I paused. How's that working out for you? She was quiet for a long moment. I miss them. I miss you. I miss the life we had. You should have thought about that before you threw it away. Tom. Megan, you made your choice. You chose Aaron over our family. You chose lies over truth. You chose destruction over repair. Now you get to live with the consequences. I hung up and went back to grilling burgers for my children. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on my back deck with a beer and looked up at the stars. Rachel called, as she did most evenings now. We'd become close friends through our shared experience of betrayal and revenge. How are you doing? She asked. Good. Really good, actually. Any regrets? I thought about that question seriously. Did I regret the systematic destruction of my ex-wife's life? Did I regret the cold, calculated way I'd dismantled everything she'd built with her lies? No, I said finally. She wanted a new life. I gave her exactly what she asked for. And Aaron? What about him? He called me today. He's broke, alone, and working at Jiffy Lube. He wanted to apologize. What did you tell him? I told him that apologies don't undo the damage. I told him that actions have consequences. And I told him that if he ever contacts me again, I'll have him arrested for harassment. Good. We talked for a few more minutes, then said goodnight. I finished my beer and went inside to check on the kids one more time before bed. Ellie was sleeping peacefully, her homework completed and laid out for the morning. Max was curled up with his stuffed dinosaur, snoring softly. They were safe, they were loved, they were home. Megan had wanted excitement and passion. She'd gotten chaos and destruction instead. I'd wanted justice and revenge. I'd gotten both, served ice cold and absolutely complete. She'd asked me to accept her betrayal or be alone. Instead, I'd chosen a third option. I'd made sure she was the one who ended up alone. Standing in my children's doorway, looking at the family I'd fought to protect and preserve, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The war was over. I'd won. And Megan and Aaron had lost everything.